How's it going, guys? We're going to do another little infomercial, public service announcement, whatever you want to call it. We make a lot of phenolic or composite parts in general, and anywhere between phenolics, carbon fibers, fiberglass, some of the plastic composites as well. And we get a question that comes up quite often from the automotive parts specifically: why don't we use gaskets in any of our composite products? And I've answered this question, I don't know how many dozens or hundreds of times by now, and it always takes me a while to type out a response or try to figure out the best way to explain it to someone without having a visual aid over messaging or anything like that. So I figured we'll make a quick video. Not sure how quick it'll be, but giving you guys some answers to that, as well as some sort of visual aids and examples. We've seen the same issue on poorly designed parts, even in metals and aluminums, things like that, that come into play for things that just aren't tested. And we wanted to give you guys a good answer with actual data backing it up, rather than just a generic answer of, oh, we don't do that because we're too lazy, or we don't like to, or it costs us money, or anything like that. So for this example, this is one of the plates that was off of my personal Yukon. This is probably one of the first sets that I had ever made out of phenolic. These were on the Yukon for, I'd say, about 10,000 miles, and I was on a road trip back to California when I was doing my move. About halfway down, I started to hear a noise, loud rattle. Figured maybe it was blower bearings, since all these superchargers were coming from the junkyard essentially, or scrap bins. So I said, well, I have extra blowers at storage in California. I'll change it when I get down there. So I got down there, pulled the blower off. Turns out it was water pump bearings. But while I was in there, I pulled these plates off to reseal and put new gaskets in, and found, and this is actually not even the worst one. The other one is in much worse shape, but I cannot find it. I'm going to see if this thing's going to stay focused here. This had factory style LS1, LS2, LS6 gaskets in it. And I don't know if you can tell, this groove on this side is actually pretty straight and pretty symmetrical still. If you look at on this side, the gasket has actually pushed in the material, since the cross section, let me see if I can get a good view here. The cross section of how much material is actually on the inside of this is very, very small. You can actually look from the back side. You can see where it's split the material. And the other plate that we had on there, actually some of these parts were completely missing. So they had actually gone through the valve, through the combustion chamber, and probably got burned up somewhere sitting on the front of the cats. So what happens, and for those of you guys that don't really understand what's happening with any of the composites, where it's multiple layers, sort of like plywood, if you will, multiple layers with a binder. So carbon fiber, phenolic, fiberglass, anything like that's going to have the same issues, as well as some of the plastics, just because they're not strong in that direction. So I'm a machinist. I'm not an artist, so bear with me. So if we were to zoom in on one of those grooves, this is kind of what it would look like. So top of the material is here. You have the groove that was cut in, as well as all the different layers of whatever it might be. We use a lot of canvas phenolic, so it's canvas layered with a phenolic style resin, and it works great in some applications. It's actually still used to this day to make brake caliper pistons and a bunch of other automotive stuff. You have to kind of know what its limitations are. So that's the groove by itself. Now if you were to put a gasket in there, so this would be a cross section of what a factory LS1, LS2 cathedral port, or even the square port gaskets would look like. So without anything actually compressing it down, it protrudes quite a bit. And normally when you do a gasket groove for a round gasket, so whether it's an O-ring or whether it's a formed gasket like the stock GM ones, you always want to have a flat bottom profile, and then you want to have a round gasket. That way when it compresses down, it gives it somewhere for the gasket to actually compress into, so that it can seal. Now what we actually ended up doing was making this groove deeper than what a factory groove was on a factory plastic manifold, to try and sort of mitigate the issues of how much this gasket was actually being smashed, so it wouldn't put a lot of pressure outwards to break the material. So we were only protruding maybe 15 or 20 thousandths, which is quite a bit less than what a factory gasket is. But once you bolt something down to it, that gasket, and basically this follows sort of a Pascal's law where it exerts a force equal in all directions once it's compressed. It tries to push back against whatever's compressing it. So if this is a intake manifold or a supercharger or the heads themselves or anything like that, it's going to push the same amount of force all the way around. Now obviously pushing down, it's not really going to be able to go anywhere since that's the bottom of our groove. Going up, it's not going to be able to go anywhere since that's obviously probably an aluminum, a large aluminum part, head or a supercharger. But these side pieces, now remember, if these were zoomed in, some of these side pieces are only maybe this big, and then maybe on the other side it'd be a little bit bigger than that. But all you really have strength-wise is this area right here. So it's real easy for this whole piece to just break at that lamination layer and come loose. And if you have it come loose enough and then it picks up some turbulence from airflow or anything like that, it'll easily get ripped away, and you'll have some problems. So what we've done, and I will grab another one of our spacers here in a second to show you guys. Alright, so I grabbed a couple of our blems from the shelf. I keep all these around just for mock-up and different reasons. This one I actually had put the wrong program in at first, and obviously this one's no good. But if you can tell, there's a very shallow groove. It's an 1/8 inch wide. It's probably only about 20 thousandths deep. This is really only a formality that we do, since there's really no reason to have a groove here other than just sort of a guide to where to put the RTV. If you look at the other one that I had here, if you look at the 1-inch one that actually came off of the Yukon, if you look carefully, let me see if I can, you can actually see a witness mark from where the factory gasket is. So they do, without any sealer or anything, they will conform enough. Let's see if I can get the reflection to pick it up. They do conform enough to where they don't even really need RTV to seal, since they will conform to whatever is smashing them on both sides, whether it's a head and a blower or a manifold or anything like that. We just put it on there just to have some extra longevity. I've had the same exact set. So basically this same set, I had a spare set with me in storage. I basically, since I didn't have anything, I was in the middle of nowhere on a road trip, I filled these with RTV and bolted it onto the heads, and it's been like that for almost 4 years without a single issue. So basically what we do on all of our phenolic composites, carbon fibers, anything like that, I just put a small groove where it sort of serves as a guide to put a small bead of RTV, put everything together, torque it to spec. You'll never have an issue with it. If you need to pop it back off for any reason, it's real easy. Just be fairly gentle, pry slowly. They will come off very well. The RTV will stick to the phenolic more than it'll stick to the aluminum. Taken plenty of them apart when guys have sent the blowers out to get ported, things like that, without any issues. Take a wire wheel or a wire brush and or some soapy water, and the RTV will come right off of these. So I will put up some other pictures from stuff that we've seen. There's also, as you can see in the manifolds here, this is a Edelbrock Performer. One of the earlier castings that they did, and they ended up fixing this later on and warrantying a bunch of these out. But they had the same issue or a similar issue to what the phenolic had, where there's just not enough stability sideways when the gasket compresses, and it actually blew out the side. This guy had lots and lots of vacuum leaks, lots of issues, and Edelbrock ended up taking care of the warranty issue for him. But we just don't want to have those problems, so we avoid going through that scenario altogether. Thanks for listening. As always, if you have any specific questions that we haven't covered in anything else or any of our other videos, feel free to give me a shout, send me a message, and we'll make sure you get taken care of.